Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the MitsuTimes podcast. My guest today is Mr. Sean Evans, the owner and driver of a very cool V8 SuperUte Triton. How are you today, sir?
Good, mate. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. I'm great. I'm a big fan of the V8 SuperUte series, and the Triton itself is obviously very near and dear to all of our hearts. So I think it's so cool to be able to talk to you and have you on and to share some of your experience driving these really cool Tritons.
My pleasure, mate. It's it's good to see there's a passion for the series and for our mighty Triton.
Yes, indeed. So, Sean, why don't we start off with telling us a little bit about yourself for the listeners who may not know who you are.
Well, I'm Sean Evans. I'm based out of Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, and I am a semi-professional racing driver and a sales rep by day.
Easy enough. So you have a super cool side job.
It's not too bad. It allows the freedom to go racing, which is awesome. I actually work for Valvoline, the oil company, so they give me a bit of freedom. And being a motorsport, minded company, they're quite supportive, which is good. So
Yeah, that's really cool. So, Sean, what is it that got you into motorsports? Was it something that you've always been a fan of?
yeah, I guess ever since I was really young. I mean, my earliest memory for me was watching old school Formula One back in the '90s with my dad when I was a young kid. And I always sort of was fascinated with going fast in circles. I kind of it just grew from a young kid. I was obsessed with it, and I was either trying to get into a go kart at the local track, or I was using a PS2 racing wheel, anything I could do to try and do both, or do something to get behind the wheel before I could do it for real life. So I've always been a massive tragic for motorsport. So
That's great. So, Sean, what is it that drew you to the V8 Super Ute series? Because it's very special and unique.
yeah, it definitely is unique. I think for myself, it was mainly the commercial value was one. Obviously, we all know budgets are a hard thing in motorsport. I like the driving style. After being in a test day, they're a very rewarding car to drive. They kind of a lot of guys growing up too that I sort of hung around when I was in sort of the junior categories had moved into Utes as a stepping stone, and everybody raved at how great those cars were. And I did a little bit of the old Ute series. I got to test the old school car before I jumped into the Super Ute, and I think they just look cool too. I mean, you can't get anything cooler than a V8 with something that looks like a tradie bought it off the showroom floor. So that was a big attraction to me. Was just the cool factor. I think was the biggest thing. So
Yeah, for sure. The cool factor is definitely what drew me in, and the fact that there's so much bumping and banging compared to Formula One or even the other popular Australian series.
yeah, it's a great platform to learn your racecraft, and yeah, they're loud and proud. They breathe fire. You get the supercar experience, I should say, with that series, and and Tyre Power being jumping on board. It's got a great backing. It's got perfect the perfect world of organization, and that you're on that supercars calendar. So they definitely get the cool factor, and they're just a great product.
Yes, agreed. So, Sean, how did this opportunity to drive this particular Triton come about?
So I have a good mate at I see for work. He's one of my customers. Mark Graham. He works out at Hanno's, one of the local shops here. And we'd just been talking one day, and he knew a little bit about what I did before I jumped in a Ute, I'd sort of been on a hiatus. I'd been out of a car for a couple of years, and he goes, "Oh, what are you doing? Not racing?" And I said, "Oh, just sort of working through things. I'm trying to find some budget, all these kind of things. And he goes, I'll ring Luke Cedars at Cedars Race Tank because he works for Cedars as a mechanic on the Ranger. And he next thing you know, my phone had Luke Cedars on it, and we were talking, and he goes, "Oh, we'll get you in for next year." And this was in 2025 for this season, and things sort of slowly progressed, and then the opportunity come up that the Triton had nobody in it for Sandown in 2025, and Luke said, "Do you want to come down and jump in the car and see how we go, and get a feel for it before you do a full season?" And I said, "Hell yeah, I'm on a plane tomorrow." And we did that all last minute, and we had a few little niggles which have stopped us doing the round, but we got into practice, and I got a feel for what the car was like, and it surprised me how great it was, and it's the best looking car in the field, I think. And next thing you know, we were talking about, oh, what car am I going to be in for 26? Looking around, and the Ranger was available, and so was I think one of the D Maxes. And I sort of said to Luke, I said, it's the best looking car. I had one as a road car actually a few years ago, and I said I got to be in the Triton, and he goes, no, you'll be in the Triton. So that's sort of how that all come about.
Great. All the planets sort of aligned there too. You got the best looking car, and like you said, the one of the best ones of the field.
Yeah, the Triton's very well sorted. We have a very good package with that car, and it's yeah, I mean, like it's got the best window angle. It looks aggressive at the front, and that, but you can hustle it. You can really hustle that car, and it's a really rewarding car to drive. So.
So, Sean, I know for most of us, we're used to seeing the Triton do rally racing, either at Dakar or even in the Asian rally. So we're used to seeing it off road, but not many people are used to seeing a Ute like the Triton bumping and grinding on the circuit. So, uh, what's it like to drive this Ute on the asphalt? Like you said, it's something that is a tradesman vehicle.
Yeah, it's very fun is the first thing I would say. It's got a lot of power. They run a 18-inch Yokohama semi-slick tire, so you get a bit of movement under brakes. It likes to move around under power, and you've got to be very you got to flow the car very well to be fast, and that's very rewarding when you go to a track like Sydney Motorsport Park where a lot of the corners are mid to high speed, and you know with an LS3 behind them, you got all that sort of best of both worlds, revs and torque, H pattern gearbox, old school heel and toe, and big brakes, so you can be as brave as you want in the braking zones, have that old school let's downshift, get it on the blip, get the flames thrown out the side, and they drive a lot better than you would actually think. A lot of people who jump in one think, oh, it's going to understeer, it's going to oversteer, it's going to feel like a boat, it's going to be heavy because they're taller than what the old utes used to be, and you get in and you get out and you go, man, that it turns, it stops, and it goes. It's actually a lot better than you ever thought, and I think that's the biggest thing that draws people in too is I just saw that in the car park, and now it's lowered to the ground, got some awesome looking wheels, it's got fire breathing V8. This is unreal, and they are an awesome car to drive. I'd say it's probably up there with a few of like probably the most rewarding car I've driven. And I've done some other cool stuff in between getting to this point in my career. But yeah, that it's just so much fun and so rewarding, and it's a refreshing driving experience.
That's so good. And yes, in my mind, the Triton with the LS3 is kind of the perfect combo. It's almost like I wish that they could come like that from the factory.
Yeah, that would be. I think they'd actually make a market for it if they did it. I know in the states of the truck series, you could see a Triton be on the truck calendar pretty quick. I reckon it'd do a good job. I think.
Sure, and like you said, it would look better than what's currently out there.
Yeah, it's got the looks to it too. There's you've got the BT, the D Max in the series, and the Hilux, but there's something about the front end of that Triton that just it looks Dale Earnhardt. It's angry, it wants to get in front of you. So it's a really good looking car.
For sure. It looks fast even when it's sitting still.
Yeah, 100%.
Sean, like you said, the Ute sets up a little bit taller. You know, you would think that it would sway back and forth, but like you said, that they have it well sorted. So what are the challenges of turning a Ute like the Triton into a circuit racer?
The first thing would be you got to fit the LS3 in it. The cars here come out with turbo diesel four-cylinder engines, and most of them are automatic, or even if they are a manual, it's probably a little bit rarer these days, especially in Australia. That's probably the biggest challenge first of all. And then I would say the next biggest challenge is just be making the ergonomics of it right. Fitting the seat properly for the driver, getting comfortable with a roll cage in such a big vehicle, and just making sure that the gear sticks in the right spot. You can see over the bonnet, stuff like that. But the guys that build them do a great job. Pace Innovations do it. The guys from Cedars Race Team, they're all over it. The guys I drive for, they do a great job with making sure the cars are set up the way you want. Like I could be picky one day and say, oh, I need the seat up 5 mil. They'll make it happen. And when you open the bonnet and you look inside one, if you ever get the chance to one day, I might shoot you some photos. But the way they sit, how low they can get the LS3 in them is actually what makes them handle so well. They've worked really hard on engineering the center of gravity. So yeah, there's a few challenges, but I think getting that big LS3 in there would be one of them.
Yes, for sure. That's really interesting to know that they have the drivetrain sitting so low that it brings the center of gravity down. That's probably, like you said, what makes it not rock back and forth like a boat.
Yeah, they run a really good engineered front suspension setup and a rear suspension setup. It's all bespoke to the SuperUte series. It's one of those things where a lot of people have put a lot of time and effort. They've gone about it the right way. Everything. As the Ute comes, as per manufacturer specs. The height and the weight are managed with a parity management that the Type Power VSUV series does. Um, and they run a Howtech engine control unit, so everybody's on the same playing field, which is great. So, um, but yeah, it's like you wouldn't believe it, and then you get in one and drive one, and you go, this is unreal.
Well, Sean, like you said, it doesn't matter if it's a D Max or a Hilux or the Triton. They're all run LS3s, all run Haltech, all run pretty similar suspensions. So, how does the Triton do against the other Utes in the field?
I'd say it's the one you want to be in compared to. I mean, at the moment, we're seeing the BT and the D Max are quite fast, but you got guys like Adam Marjoram driving a D Max, and Aaron Borg is a four-time champion in a D Max. Cody Brzezinski's in the BT, and same with Dave Cedars. These are guys who have had years of experience in the Utes and are always going to be at the front. But that the Triton's the fastest in a straight line. That's how they bring their parity management into it. There's ways that they can bring everybody back to a level playing field, but it's as good on any given Sunday is what I should say. And the real strength of a Triton I've found is it's really great under brakes, and it's really good over curbs and through the corners. That's where a lot of your strengths are mid corner, because it's slightly shorter actually width wise than the rest of the cars, which makes it a bit more nimble.
That's interesting. No, I didn't realize that the wheelbase was a little bit.
Yeah, so just the width, it's just a tiny bit narrower, so it makes the car a little bit more lively in the rear, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, Sean, what is it? Is there anything about the Triton or even the Super Ute series altogether that maybe fans from all over the world might not realize?
I think just the not only the cool factor like we said, but the racing's close. The personalities are big. It's a series you can get behind because there's a lot of guys in the category that are, they're not full-time professional racing drivers. They work every day like the punter would coming through the gate to watch. We're all, out there trying to make a dream come true, and working hard. And I think that's why people can relate a bit more to that. I think, and just because the racing is as good as it is, I think the product's really good. it's very market relevant to what's going on in Australia and other, even in Southeast Asia. And that, there's the Triton's big over there. The Asian Utes are big over there, and even in Japan, I know Argentina have a pickup series as well that are based off the dual cab Utes that we see here in Australia as well. And because it's something you can see in the car park, I think a lot of people won't realise. Oh, I've driven in one of these, or my dad's got one, or I've seen that parked outside a construction site, and they race these things. Like, I think that's the biggest thing people don't seem to realize, is that they're just like everyday cars, and we've turned them into these brilliant feats of engineering.
Hmm. Yeah. So those, for listeners who aren't familiar with the Super Ute series, it's not like the American truck series. It's not a body, a plastic body that that's shaped like the Ute. It is actually the Ute, the truck itself, built into parity with this. So all the sheet metal and all that stuff is like it is from the factory.
Yeah, correct. It's what we call a cab chassis here in Australia. So the chassis and the cab, or the body, are mated together. So that's how it comes off the floor. Is how pretty much the body and the chassis are, and we turn them into race cars.
Yep. So Sean, like you said earlier, the Super Ute series often follows the Supercar series around. So how do you approach a typical race weekend? It's almost like a circus moving from one town to another, and maybe it's hard to, kind of bring yourself into reality that there's a lot going on, but you're there to race.
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of coming into a race weekend for me is a lot of it would be watching a lot of video. If it's a track that I've been to before or haven't, it's probably good to just refresh the mind. I like watching video. I'm a bit more hands-on type of learner. So looking at the data and seeing all the squiggly lines, sometimes it doesn't translate to me. Where if I watch the video, I can see where I need to be. And I think it's just being relaxed. Like, my wife comes with me to every race meeting, and if we can just get an extra day in before we head down, and just relax and sort of roll into the weekend, I find I do a bit better. But there's a lot of prep before that. Like, in between races, I'm on the simulator a lot, probably a couple hours every night, just to stay sharp and trying to get my butt in anything I can drive in between rounds. I think, yeah, just the big thing for prep is, just making sure you're in the right mindset. I like to be really excited going into it, and also try and keep myself as calm as possible, so I'm not getting overexcited going into a weekend.
Sure. And from the Super Ute drivers that I've talked to in the past, they've said that they've kind of had to adapt their normal racing style for, maybe they have tried other series, like you said you were in go-karts and stuff before. So do you feel that you have to change your driving style because the Super Utes are so different?
Yeah, it's a unique driving style to get one to go fast, and I had to do a lot of work myself through just learning how to manage the brake pedal properly, and when can I, transition the weight to the rear, and positioning the car in a certain way where it will comply to what I do. And I'd driven some classic Trans Am in an old '68 Mustang on, old Hoosier tires that were like balloons. And I sort of thought going into it naive, I thought, oh, it might be similar to this, and I'll try that, do what I did in that. And it was, yeah, it's so uniquely its own driving style that, you know, everybody coming into it, I wouldn't matter if you were probably a supercar driver or someone who's done Aussie legend cars or Aussie racing cars or something like that. You've got to adapt to the car, and yeah, it's so uniquely its own thing.
Yeah, and that's what we hear a lot. So I want to kind of dig a little bit deeper. So compared to the cars that you've driven before, what would you say is the biggest difference between driving the Triton and driving that old Trans Am car?
I think a lot of it comes down to smoothness, and just keeping the brake, like modulating the brake pedal. They're so well. The brake package is so good on them that you can carry so much speed in these into the corners. You're probably holding the brake too long when you got to trust the car. And for me, that was a big thing going in. Like in the Trans Am car, it was a lot more point and shoot. You'd brake real heavy into the braking zone, sort of V off the apex, and give it as much gas as you can to get the back to walk. And it was it was fast sideways. Whereas these things, it's more, I'd say more in line with what, if you're going to go to a supercar level, it is the genuine stepping stone into where to go. And besides the Super 2 category, of course, but you know, these the Utes are so unique. You got to make sure they're so sensitive to brake, especially the Triton. It's so sensitive to brake and throttle input. And for me, that learning that was the biggest thing. And like we were testing at Sydney Motorsport Park, and I was where I probably wanted to be, or where thought I was going to be. And next thing you know, come race weekend, I was up in the top 10, and I was going, oh, I wonder what I did different. And I look back at the data, and I'm just my braking styles changed completely. Like carrying more speed in the corner, trail braking a lot more effectively, and making sure I'm not holding the brake pedal too long, turning into a corner. And how you get to 100% throttle. It's Luke Cedar said a great thing to me in testing. He goes, it's not a race to you know get to 100% throttle. It's a race to 100% throttle. So the quicker you can get up to 100% throttle, the better. It was something that stuck with me going into that. But yeah, the biggest differences between the other things I've driven and the Ute itself, which make it really unique, is how you brake the car and how you get the speed out of that. So
And for me, that's one of my favorite parts of watching the Super Ute series is you see the Utes just kind of throw themselves into the corner because the brakes are so good, and they have the confidence now to do that. And that's why they can kind of lean on each other, door to door, and make the racing so daggone exciting.
yeah, most of the guys know what they're getting into. Each race, we know that we're going to lean on each other, but it's all respectful. No one's out there, you know, smacking into someone's door too hard. And everybody, you sort of know the guys that you lean on a little bit more because they'll give you a little bit more. But yeah, like we're all, even across the top 10, we're all still so close. And one slip up, if you're up in P3, you're down to P11. That's how great the series has become. Like you said, the brake package, that's what makes it so exciting for the viewer. Like that's a great rewarding thing for a driver too. It makes it exciting. You go, I have a go at this guy and stick the nose up the inside, and you can have a race to the apex. It's good fun.
Yes, yes, indeed. So, for those that aren't familiar with the V8 Super Ute series, I mean, there's everything from big, long road courses to tight street courses where the corners you almost to a near stop to complete them. So, do you find that the Triton has a advantage at maybe one type of track over the other?
Yeah, I think for talking to some of the other guys, we were talking about it at Sydney Motorsport Park round one actually this year. The street circuits will suit the Triton more, just because of how nimble it can be and how good the brakes are. It's one of those. It sort of suits that car a bit more. And for me, I love street circuits. It's going to be great for me. And um, they just, yeah, we were talking about it, and I said to Adam Marjoram, I said, oh, what do you reckon? We're getting a little bit. The Triton's getting a little bit killed in straight line here. What do you reckon when we head to the street circuit? He goes, oh, you'll be stronger at the street circuits, and especially at Tasmania as well, where it's a bit more of a flowy circuit, not as much as you know, come down all the way down to a slower speed and then work your way back up down a main straight. It's a bit more flow. It'll suit the Triton a bit better because the car responds really well to flow, and it's going to be good when it come Gold Coast 500 and the Adelaide Grand Final that we can get the type out of it. So Utes out there put on a show.
So, for your Super Ute career, what has been the highlight or your favorite memory so far?
I think it just goes back to the first time I actually got to drive one properly. For me, I'd been out of the car for a while, probably a bit of crazy backstory or too much backstory. I tried for years to get into the series to get on a national level, and I'd had a few false starts, and finally got in the car at Sandown, and to know that I could compete at that level was unreal. Just to go out there very, very validating for me. And being out of the seat for 2 years, I was like, oh, I hope I still got it. And went out there, and the car just, it was nice to me first time. And then I was trying to be nice to it. And it was just this whole mix of happy and sad emotions, or like emotional. I guess I was pretty emotional driving it because it just was so rewarding at the same time. I just couldn't believe that the car was as good as it was, to be honest. And I think that for me has been the highlight so far. I'm hoping to make some more highlights this year in 2026. I think just the getting to that level, and being that the Triton was my first big time sort of jump into the big time series, that'll stick with me for a long time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's such a great opportunity, especially for you to be part of Cedars Racing, who's doing all kinds of different racing. So to have that support of, obviously the guys in the garage know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm extremely lucky that Jade Cloughton's my mechanic. He's a wizard. Not one bolt goes untouched on the car, and he loves the Triton himself too, which is awesome. And big shout out plug to owns half the car, which is Jade's. Whatever I need, he's 100% behind me to do it, and he wants to win it just as much as I do. And we're building into a good year this year, and yeah, he's just such a great mechanic, and his attention to detail is next to none. And there's other guys in that garage too that we can lean on. There's Cliffy, Dave's mechanic. He's done everything, mechanicked on everything. He's won a lot of stuff. He did the old Utes. He's a bit of a motorsport tragic too. But you got Bowie, you got Zamet. I'm saying their nicknames, and you got Harry up there with Marjoram. Everyone's leaning on each other for the one goal, which is success. And if you're struggling, you can just say, hey, what am I doing wrong, or am I doing something wrong, or you know, what are you guys doing that's different to us? And there's no, oh no, we won't tell you what we're doing. It's like, no, do this, I'm running this brake bias, or I'm doing this change, or I'm doing this. And oh yeah, I'll help. And other things too, like I help you bleed brakes, I'll do that with you. Let's go over patch together and check ride heights, stuff like that. It's a very great team environment there at Cedars. So very lucky to be a part of it, and I'm very lucky to have Jade as my number one guy on the car.
Yes, absolutely. So with all that being said, Sean, do you see the Super Ute series as a long term home or a stepping stone towards the next series that you want to get to?
For me, I'd love to stay in the Type A V8 SuperUte series as long as I can. I think for me it could be a home. I mean, I won't say no to an opportunity to move up the ladder, but I'm 29 now, so I think getting into a development driver role with the supercar team's probably realistically off the cards, but I will never say no. I just, you know, it's how my whole history went with trying to get into that series from when I was younger to now. It was a 10-year gap from when I first started trying to get into when I actually got in. Um, I think I'd love to make it my home and, be like Dave Cedars and try and win a few championships and have the longest standing career I can. And, I'd love to go up. Yeah, supercars is there, but I think, for me, being realistic, you can't go wrong with being at those events in cars that draw a huge crowd, that are so rewarding to drive, and you're still getting that V8 fix. So I think, yeah, I'd definitely love to make it a home for long terms.
So Sean, you talked about getting to the race weekend maybe a day early with your wife so that you can kind of relax and get into the right mindset from the time you come through the gate and the team has unloaded the Ute and you're putting your race suit on. How do you go from being in the pits in the garage to getting up on the starting line? What do you do to mentally prepare? Do you have like a routine?
I have a weird thing where I always got to do it, because every time I don't do it, I don't have a good run. I'll walk up out the front of the car, and I'll actually kick my heels on the ground in my boots and push my heel back to the back of my racing boot. Um, that's sort of one thing I picked up from early on. I just started doing it randomly one day. And I went out there in Trans Am and I won the race, and I thought, oh, I better keep doing this. But for me, a lot of my mindset going into the round is, as every other driver, I think, is that, always got a chance to win. Like to you know, really visualize myself in those positions to win, and being, whether that's by visualizing being behind, taking the lead, or being in the lead and running away with it. I think it's good to be in a positive mindset, and if you can dream it and believe it, you can be it, some people say. And I think if you can put that towards your craft, and that'll help at fruition. I like to sort of go through that, and like to be ready. I like to be ready, suit on, up, done, in the car, ready to go down to dummy grid. Um, I like to hang around the car too. If my wife doesn't like it, I like to hang around and be around it. And she goes, "Oh, can we go now back to the hotel?" And I understand, it's pretty hot sometimes in some of these races. I just love hanging around it and being around the atmosphere, and that to me is part of the preparation too. Getting into the weekend, and getting into that mindset of we're here to play, and we're here to and most importantly enjoy ourselves. Yeah, I'm just tragic for it. So it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a football team or a rugby team who's traveling, and you have to, kind of put yourself in. Okay, it's time to do what I came here to do.
Definitely. Once the helmet's on, it's eyes forward and ready to go. So yeah, just being being there, and building yourself into the all the emotions of it. I'm probably more of an emotional driver. I like to I like to be in the moment and let the emotions flow, whether that's being real happy, angry, sad, whatever it is. I like going on the roller coaster, because it's such something that you work so hard to be at. So um, yeah, like you said, like a football team, or a rugby team, they have that moment before they run out on field. Let the emotions flow.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Boosted Fabrication. They create custom parts for most Mitsubishi vehicles, parts stronger and lighter than OEM, such as cross members, engine mounts, bumper supports, and many others, including custom parts by request. Boosted Fabrication builds all parts to order using only high-quality materials, bonded together with expert precision, and finished to not only last, but to look good doing it. Check out all the products they have to offer at boostedfabrication.com. So, for those that aren't familiar with the V8 SuperUte series, it's a qualifying round and then 4 rounds of racing. What goes on with the Triton in between those rounds? Because we obviously don't get to see that part from watching TV.
Yeah, yeah. No, we usually, depending on, sometimes every car gets weighed anyway before the end of the year, but depending on finishing order of qualifying, you might get called over the scales to just check weights and ride heights. Usually straight away, Jade's got the car up in the air, wheels off, ready for the tyre guys to check whether pressure adjustments need to be done, or we need to do a pad change, or something needs to be adjusted. But more importantly, he's just making sure everything's sweet under there. He's double checking every nut and bolt, just basically getting the car up and having a good look. Uh, we tend to, as drivers, we tend to, get shushed away, let the mechanics do their thing. But Jade's really good, and we'll go. I like to be quite technical as well. My background being I'm a diesel mechanic by trade before I got into the sales game, but I like to know about what's going on, and what change are we making, why are we making it. He's very open with me about that, and our relationship's really good. Um, yeah, a lot of that goes on to just we pull in off the track. A lot of the time we'll go into Parc Fermé, so the cars will go on 45-degree angle after a race, and can't be touched under Parc Fermé rules until the category manager comes over the radio and said, "That's it, Parc Fermé over. We can park the cars up back in the garage." But a lot of it is just getting the car up, making sure the car's 100% for the next race, getting it prepped and turned around. And everybody in that field does a great job, because sometimes we have a moving schedule, we like to call it. Sometimes we'll have a 2-hour break between a race, and sometimes we've got 20 minutes. So it's really great. It's a really testament to what they do and how they can turn those cars around in a short period of time.
Absolutely, and to be honest, the one of my favorite aspects of the SuperUte series is kind of how the driver of the car is so involved with the tuning and the setup of the car, whereas You don't really see that in a lot of series. It's almost like one of those, you just drive the car and shut up and don't add your input. So I really love that aspect of the V8 Super Ute series.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to everybody wanting to be so competitive and at the front. And our culture's really good at Cedars. A lot of the time, I'm straight out of the car, debrief with Jade about how it felt, what I was feeling. I mean, we tend to talk a fair bit during the race over comms, but I'll go straight into a data debrief with Liv, my engineer, and we'll talk about, okay, so where am I lacking to the other guys, or what am I doing really well compared to them, and we'll share data, and you know, it's so you're the guy behind the wheel, and you need to know, or girl, I should say, that behind the wheel that needs to, if you want to get the 100% out of the car, you need to know what's going into the car. I believe. I want to know why we're making a camera adjustment. Okay, so why was that out? If I hit something, or am I driving it? Am I under driving it here? It can do it more. Okay, so we've made a change to help. Like just a little changes such as brake bias at Sydney Motorsport Park at round one this year helped me. I was locking a front into turn two. The left front was locking under heavy braking. I kept saying to Jade over the radio, I said, "Mate, I keep locking a left front, and then I miss a shift into second and have to do it twice. I'm going, man, I'm falling apart. What am I doing?" And we talked amongst ourselves, and Cliffy goes to Jade, "Let's run a bit of rear bias in it and see what he likes." Next thing you know, I'm not punching a brake. I'm carrying way more speed into the apex, getting my shifts down pat. So it's little things like that that I think we wouldn't have found if I just went and drove it. Wasn't so involved in like, hey, let's what's about the car that is going into the setup. That's how do I need to drive it a certain way, or is my driving style working? So I think we are, all of us are very involved in how the setup works, and especially data. Like the front guys are very big on data. They're always doing data sessions. It's good to sit in on them when you finished your debrief with your engineer, just to see what they're doing. And those guys are more than happy for you to look. They'll even overlay your data to theirs while they're doing their own debrief, just to say, "Hey man, we'd rather you up here with us than the other team, so let's go for it." And it's a great atmosphere like that. And that's sort of the biggest thing for me is learning off those guys who've done it for years. And if I can learn off them and know what's in my car, oh yeah, my car's set up to be the best on the grid, as same as the guys that are at the front, then I know that I can get the cogs working and get the result at the end of the weekend.
Yeah, for sure. And as we were talking about earlier, all the cars are, parody of each other. So it's those small tweaks that really make the big difference when it comes to racing like this.
Yep, 100%. There's not a huge advantage at all in this. You won't see someone, run away with it, so to speak, like you might see in some other categories. Tires, they're all the same. Everybody runs the same tire. We got everything. It's all up to you how you set the car up to make things last the race, and to be fast. And like you said, all those little things make it up, and that's what makes it so unique. That there's all these things that add up, and you look at the data and go, "Oh, I feel like I'm braking really late here," and you look at the data and you go, "Man, they're not braking late at all there, but it carries more speed into the corner," or something like that. That it makes up a whole lap over a whole lap that turns into being faster. And that's these cars are so good at creating that close racing that once you're all together, it is all those little things that you've talked about in data that make the difference between being, winning the race or being down at, and just outside the top five.
So, Sean, I know we've only been through round one at Sydney, but how do you feel that the fan reception has been towards the Super Ute series, at least for that race? And how does it feel starting the 2026 series? Does it feel like the fans are still there and their fans are supporting the series?
Yeah, it's definitely got a passionate fan base. I had a lot of good interactions actually at the track. And during the signing sessions, there was a lot of lineups for some signatures, which was awesome. Come and meet the drivers. I think a highlight for me at Sydney was we had a young fella come up to the car with his mum, and he knew his stuff. He's only about 7. He's like, "Oh, is it H pattern or sequential?" I said, "Mate, do you want to jump in it?" and his eyes lit up, and I said, "Jump on in," He's jumped in the car and he looking at what's what. He's having the time of his life. He's telling his mum how great it is, and and then next thing you know, a bit of a crowd builds around the car, and people stop and look at the cars when they're there. Not a lot of people sort of don't pay attention. You get your naysayers and all that on social media, but I think the category's got such a good, positive, passionate fan base that there's a need for a series like that on the supercars calendar, and everybody that you talk to that is Type A SuperUte fan is, they're super passionate. They know all the drivers. They know the cars. They know, that car had that livery on it 2 years ago, and now it's got this livery. And they ask you, you know, why'd you make that choice on that color, or those sort of things. But there was a lot of good interactions with fans I had, and you know, after a couple of the races, we had punters and general public coming up going, "Great race, guys! That was awesome!" Walking past our pits, I hadn't even got my helmet off yet, and I had people saying that to us. So that was a really great reception, especially being the first round of the year too, and having so many people come through the gates over that weekend. It was actually like it's been up there with one of the best events I've been to for a long time. So
Wow, good. Well, Sean, is there anything that you could think of that could, if you were running it, that you might improve the popularity of the series? Because I know for me, the only complaint that I have is that it's too far in between for races. Round one's in February, round two's in May, round three's in July. So it's kind of, I'm craving that need for, I want to have a race every week, even though I know that's not logistically possible for most of the drivers.
yeah, I have to agree with you on that. It does feel like forever between races, and I think to to boost popularity, I think we just got to go back to making drivers household names, and getting really leveraging the marketing power that the whole series has, being that it's so relevant to the day to day market and the new car sales. Like some of the number one selling cars in Australia are dual cab utes, and if we could get some of those guys that drive these certain brands, or if Mitsubishi wants to do an ad, I'll put the ute in it myself. And I think if you get that more personal attachment to the drivers, as well as you know, it sort of reaches if you get them, more involved with the person, and then the series grows, the fan base grows. There's a more emotional attachment to the series, but the guys and the girls behind the scenes, like Philippa, does an awesome job at running the category, and she's always thinking of new ways to get us involved, like all of us involved into to promoting the series. And I think the biggest gripe we all have is the time between drinks, but yeah, I think if we could, a big point for me would be if we could get the drivers being more household names and getting them, more out there and showing the general public that hey, we're just as we're professional drivers too, and this is an awesome series, and kind of like how NASCAR does their tier series. So some of those truck drivers over in the states are very well known and make their way through into Cup. We want people to follow us and the series, when we're in it and when we're gone. So it's, I think if we could get that rolling, as well as, maybe a couple more rounds in there, if Philippa was listening, it'd be awesome. If we could get the budgets to do that. Yeah, I think those are the two big things I think that would really promote the series to the next level.
I agree. I agree. So if I was a 12, 15-year old driver, and I'm starting out in karts, well, what advice would you give me if my goal, my end dream, is to end up in the V8 Super Utes?
Oh, it's a great question, that one. I think for if you're a young fella, wanting to make your way up the ranks, I think a lot of the biggest advice I would give is work on your tenacity and determination. You know, you're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of opportunities that might seem like a great idea that might not be. You're going to probably come across a few people that will steer you in a roundabout way without helping you. just to stick to your guns. You do it for the right reasons. You have that dream of reaching that goal of being in that Type Power Vet SuperUte series. Don't let anything waver you from that goal. And if you've got to go out and find budget, or you got to go out there and talk to sponsors, keep going. Don't stop. Like I said, it took me 10 years to get to where I am now. And, I've gone about it in a few different ways to try and get here. But I think a lot of the young guys nowadays just need to, you know, I think just stick at it, work on your craft, work on your commercial profile, and getting good at talking to people and, networking. But, yeah, being determined at that end goal and always having that dream in your hand and not letting go of it. I think that's the biggest thing for when you're young, because I lost a bit of the fire in the belly for a while, for a couple of years. And um, you just think about to when I was a young fella, and, my dream was always to be a race car driver. And, I think holding on to that so dearly is what will get you there in the end.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, Sean, we've talked about a lot of different aspects of the V8 Super Ute series. What is your favorite thing about the Super Ute series?
For me, it's just the way the cars race. It's also such a great atmosphere out of the car that you want to be in the car as much as you do out of the car, if that makes sense. But just they drive so well. They're so much fun to drive, and it's so rewarding to get a lap right. It's so rewarding to make a pass. And um, I'm a purist. I just love racing, and the more I can drive the Triton, the better. So I think, yeah, that's my favorite aspect of it.
So I really want to encourage the listeners who aren't familiar with the series to go and watch. Even if it's not, I would prefer if they watched the races live. But obviously, I know it's not feasible for everyone. There's plenty of YouTube videos of 2025 races, and Sydney's on there from 2026. What would be one word to describe the V8 Super Ute series to you, Sean, that would draw somebody to want to watch and be involved?
Ooh, one. If I could put it into one word, enigma. It's an enigma. It's that thing you sort of in the corner of your eye. You've had a look at it. You've seen some support categories, and you're going, "That looks pretty cool," but I'm not sure if I should dive in head first. You should probably dive in head first.
I love that. So, Sean, for me, my favorite track to watch the V8 Super Ute series is Gold Coast. To me, it's the most exciting, and like you said, the Triton does so well in the street course series, or in the street courses itself. What is your favorite track to drive the Triton on?
Oh, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to go with Surface Paradise as well with the Gold Coast when that comes up. That's gonna be. That's probably going to be the best one to drive at. I'm really looking forward to that. But to be fair, I think so far I'm going to go with, you're only good as your last result. So I'll go with Sydney is my favourite so far to drive it at. But Sandown was quite nice too. So if I was to if I'm going to throw a dart at a board, I hope it lands on Gold Coast.
Now, if there was if you could run the series and you could go to any track in the world, what would be your dream track to take the V8 Super Ute series to for just a round?
Oh, for if anywhere in the world too. I'll have to think about it. I think I would probably like to go to, I think Portland, the Portland International Road, that road course up in Portland would be a real good track for our series. Just the way that sort of set up. I've done a few laps on the sim in the O'Reilly's car. It's a lot of fun. It's fast, but it's also technical. So that would be one. I'll pick another one just because I've got two in my mind, and I'd probably like to go somewhere like Road Atlanta. I think those two courses, just something about them, just the way the Utes drive, and the way that those tracks sort of produce racing from stock car to sports cars. I think you'd be surprised how well they go there. So they'd be my two picks. Take them overseas to the states.
I would absolutely love that. Would be a dream come true, honestly. So, Sean, outside of the race suit, what would be your dream car to race on any series, any track, what's your dream setup?
I mean, everybody would probably say V8 Supercar, but for me, the ultimate dream, I think, it would have to be like 2000, yeah, 2005, 2006, Holden Racing Team, the VYVZ Commodore Supercar. I think that would be my ultimate dream, just to drive the heyday of V8 Supercars. That would be awesome. Um, yeah, some of those other series worldwide. I mean, I'd love to have a go at Daytona 500. You know, I'm a bit of a NASCAR fan myself, and I'd love to get over to the States one day and even have a crack at one. That'd be awesome. I think that's right there on my list with the supercar. If they were equal, they're equal. Just jump in a stock car and have a go at the Daytona 500.
Yeah, that would amazing. I'm sure a lot of drivers all over the world's dream come true just because it's so special.
Yeah, it carries so much significance. Lucky for me, I like whenever I used to get in from school, school and high school, they'd have the race replay on of that the Cup race, whatever it was that weekend. I used to watch Dale Jr. in the Mountain Dew COT car, and I was like, just brings back memories. You know, it'd be awesome to fly around Daytona like all those guys do, and see if what that sort of style of racing's like.
Absolutely. And like you even said, I love the V8 Super Ute series of today with the Mustangs and the Camaros, but back when it was the Falcon and the Commodore, I think the racing was just a little bit more special, a little bit better.
Yeah, it had a lot more cars in it back then in the series, and they were also even, which made it good too. And we have that too now. Just there was just 50 of them on the track.
Yeah, that series seems to be really growing, and I hope that it brings the V8 Super Ute series with it.
Oh, fingers crossed.
So, Sean, if you could peel back the race suit, I know you do sales as your day job, and before that, you were a diesel mechanic. What would you be doing if you weren't racing?
Oh man, I couldn't live without it for starters. But look, I'd like to hope that I could have made it playing rugby. I mean, I played pretty high level rugby league over here in Australia. For a couple of years when I was really young. But I think if I wasn't being a race car driver, I'd probably pick being a rugby league player. But look, honestly, I don't think I can live without racing. It's always been the one thing that I've had on my mind, in my heart, my whole life. And every time I try something else, I always go back to it. It's always, even if I try to not watch a race, I can hear it in the background. I'm drawn to it, and being a part of it and being yeah, it's just I don't think I could live without it. But yeah, if I had to pick, hopefully I'm playing footy.
And that makes sense to me because I think the V8 Super Ute series is so comparable to rugby. I mean, it's definitely it's not a delicate series.
That's no Formula One, that's for sure.
Yes. So, Sean, where can people find and follow you on social media so they can see this Airbag Man Triton, in pictures and to see you going around the circuit?
Yeah, definitely. You can find my Facebook is Sean Evans Motorsport. On Instagram, it's Sean.Evans with an S at the end. That's my Instagram handle. And my YouTube is just Sean Evans. You can find that we do our vlogs there for each round, and sometimes what I'm doing in between to keep everybody up to date. Yeah, if anybody wants to, get in contact, jump on board for the year, my email's SeanEvansMotorsport@gmail.com. It's a cheeky plug there. Please watch the broadcast. Anyone listening, jump on and watch it live, like you said, or watch the Tyre Power V8 series on YouTube. Get behind it. The more the merrier, and you won't regret it, I don't think.
I agree. Yes. If you just give it a chance, I think a lot of people really enjoy it.
I definitely agree with you.
Sean, at the end, I always give people a chance to give a thanks or a shout out to anybody who's helped them get where they are, help get the Triton where it is. Is there anybody that you want to give a thanks or a shout out to?
I'll take the opportunity while I can because it's the first time I've been on a podcast, believe it or not. But I'd like to give a big shout out to way back in the day, Wes Beeman, who gave me opportunities coming through the ranks. He sort of took me under his wing. Luke Cedars and the whole Cedars race team for, the opportunity to race the Ute this year. Jade Cloughton, who's my mechanic, a huge shout out to him for, always being there at every race and just being the great bloke that he is. I've got to shout out my wife because she puts up with me. She does an awesome job. My family as well. I'd like to thank them for all their support over the years. But one person in particular, I'll last but not least, is Mark Graham. He's probably the driving force behind me getting into the Tyre Power SuperUte series. When I was chasing budget, he was pushing me. He was ringing people for me, and then the boys at Airbag Man jumped on board. Benny Clamp, Richard Clamp, Aaron Vanell, they all said, let's do it, let's get behind you. But when there was looking like we couldn't find some budget, Mark was ringing people he knew. He was pushing proposals out for me. He was doing everything, So a big shout out to him. I think, who else could I thank? There's a million people you could thank along the way. I think those guys were really important and instrumental in getting me to where I am. And, here, as I stand here today, I'm the product of all those people putting in effort and, helping me in some way or another. So.
Well, good. I'm very thankful to those people as well for getting you where you are. And, to all the people behind the V8 SuperUte series that keep it going, especially the Triton teams. I think it's so cool to see a Mitsubishi in a big series like that. So that's definitely special to me. And Sean, I just have to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on here and share the story, the story of your Triton. And I wish you the best of luck in round 2 and for the rest of the 2026 series. I'll definitely be watching and cheering you on.
No, thank you. It was a pleasure to come on, mate. I know that the time zones don't line up the best for us, and I appreciate you taking the time to have me on. And I'm glad you guys are following the Triton and the Mitsubishis out there in the world.
Absolutely. And if we can somehow make it work, I would love to check in mid-season or at the end of the season, and we could talk about how the season went and what's the plans for 2027.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. It sounds good. Give the listeners an update, and I'd love to check in with you too, mate. It'd be awesome.
Good deal. Well, I hope you have a great night. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here and do this. I'll definitely be in touch, and can't wait to hear from you.
No, thank you, mate.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.